actually here to listen, not to talk, so I won't talk a lot. Just on this topic, I was just listening to the last speaker. A couple of months ago, I happened to be in Mexico, giving a talk at the National University, quite a high-quality university, a couple hundred thousand students, very serious work. It's free. In the city, there was an attempt about 10 years ago to raise tuition, but there was a national student strike in protest, and the government backed down, so there's no tuition. In fact, on campus, one of the main administration buildings is still occupied by students from that strike 10 years ago. It's kind of in the city, Mexico City, there's a university which was founded by Lopez Obrador, last mayor, kind of a progressive mayor, which is not only free but open admissions with compensatory programs for students who don't quite make it. I was there too, also quite impressive, serious work. My son-in-law teaches there, it's quite good. I went from there to California, which is one of the richest places in the world. They're in the midst of destroying the greatest public education system in the world. Tuitions at the big universities are kind of like Ivy League schools, tens of thousands of dollars. And the idea is just partly to create a kind of a two-tiered society, so education for the rich, not for anyone else, and also to trap students. If you come out of school with a huge debt, you're trapped. You cannot come out be a public interest lawyer, political activist, and so on. This is indoctrination techniques. That's happening in most of the country. So in most of the states in the United States, more than half the funding for the university is actually coming from tuition. Okay, that's a way of essentially privatizing the universities and turning them into private universities for the wealthy and privileged, and vocational schools for everyone else. As this comparison shows, and other indications show very clearly, it's not an economic problem. In fact, a tiny percent of it's been calculated that the amount of administrative waste in the hopelessly dysfunctional U.S. health system would easily pay for all public education in the country. It's not an economic issue. I'm sure it's not here either. It's a social issue and a cultural issue. Is society willing to support the kind of things that you can read in the University of Toronto program, website or whatever it is, describing what a university ought to be, which Linda McQuaig read before. That's quite proper. And a civilized society ought to just do that. And poor societies can. There's no reason why we can't. As for outside corporate funding, if there isn't going to be any public support, the university is going to have to go somewhere, and then you have to be extremely vigilant to ensure that that doesn't influence the kind of programs that are carried out. Now, suppose that the Monk School gets established, as I suppose it will. It's a school of global affairs, funded by the mining industry, which is a huge stain on Canada's reputation. The whole mining industry, most of it is in Canada. It's very destructive of communities, of the environment. I've seen some of it firsthand. And gold mining, where this is going to come from, that's the worst of all. So a School of Public Affairs in Canada, especially one funded by the mining industry, has every reason to make that a central topic of study. And not just study. It can be activism. People who live in these communities that are being destroyed, they have no voice. They're poor. They're weak. They count on support from people who do have a voice, and that could be here, for example. So in brief, there's just a lot of options, and you've got to find which ones are the right ones.
Yeah.
So we've received word from student governors inside that it would be really helpful to have Professor Chomsky inside gracing governors with his presence, and to have all